call. Your Honor, at the time, prosecution would like to call Dr. F. Reese Warren to the stand. And Your Honor, would it be okay if I set up a demonstrative aid to go along with the direct examination?
Permission to aid my co-counsel.
Your Honor, when the demonstrative evidence is in use, I just ask that I can move so I can better see the evidence. Absolutely.
And Your Honor, just before we begin, with the demonstrative aid, the expert pre-checks some of the markings on it, so we just ask if that's okay.
I'm sorry, what was the?
The expert, the demonstrative aid is a chart, and the expert made checks on the chart, so we just ask if that's okay to be left on there.
Fine with me as a demonstrative.
That's fine.
Okay.
Sure.
May I begin?
You may.
Could you please introduce yourself for the court?
Yes, I am Dr. Reese Warren and I live here in Midlands.
What do you do for a living?
I am a Neil J. Boyce professor and chair of the linguistics department at Midland State University. I also routinely lecture to law enforcement officials and quite literally wrote the book on how to address targets. My book, How to Speak to Alleged Criminals, is currently in its 5th edition and standard nationwide.
Where did you go to school, Dr. Warren?
I attended UNC Charlotte for my undergrad, where I double majored in English and linguistics. I went on to receive a PhD in linguistics from Georgetown.
How are you involved in today's case?
I was originally solicited by the defense as part of an entrapment case. However, upon reaching my initial conclusion that Officer Keenan did follow best practices, I was subsequently asked to testify here today by the state.
And were you compensated for your testimony today?
Yes, defense counsel compensated me with a $10,000 payment for my initial analysis. I am being paid a $500 retainer fee by the state.
Did you use reliable methods and principles standard in your field?
Yes, I relied primarily on a transcript review, which is the standard in my field.
And did you reliably apply these methods and principles to the facts in today's case?
Yes, absolutely.
You mentioned a transcript review. What is that?
In the field of forensic linguistics, we have devised a set conversational path that we expect law enforcement officials to guide their targets on. A transcript review simply entails a careful coding for the adherence to or deviation from this path.
Now, did you use any other materials to form your conclusion?
In addition to the March 31st transcript, I analyzed a March 30th email exchange. I also reviewed the affidavits of both Corey Hyde and Officer Mickey Keenan, but these weren't the subject of any linguistic analysis, but just provided me with a contextual background.
And from these materials, were you sufficiently able to come to a conclusion?
Yes, in fact, I reached 2 main conclusions.
What was your first conclusion?
My first conclusion is that Officer Mickey Keenan did follow best practices during the March 31st conversation.
What are best practices?
In law enforcement education, there's a set methodology to addressing the accused. We expect law enforcement officials to begin with open-ended questions and then proceed into a period of subtle hint dropping. Should the target still fail to implicate him or herself, then the law enforcement official may choose to straightforward ask.
Did Mickey Keenan utilize best practices when interacting with Avery Bancroft?
Yes, during the March 31st conversation, she exemplified these best practices. She began by asking open-ended questions such as, "What are you thinking?" and then dropped subtle hints such as, "You'll need to make sure Covington is happy."
What was your second conclusion?
My second conclusion is that both Corey Hyde and Officer Mickey Keenan limited their use of conversational strategies that have been shown through the scholarly literature to induce criminal conduct in unwilling targets.
And what are these conversational strategies?
We have agreed upon a set of 10 conversational strategies in the field that have been shown. And I've brought a demonstrative aid to assist that I've often found is helpful in my teaching.
Would you mind stepping down to make use of the list?
No.
Your Honor, we're looking for the witness to step down.
Sure.
So Dr. Warren, can you explain to us what we're seeing here?
Yes. These 10 actions are the methods that I mentioned before that have been shown to induce criminal conduct. In this column, I have marked the ones that were found utilized by Keenan, and in this column, I've indicated the ones that were utilized by Hyde.
So there are only 4 conversational strategies that were utilized.
Yes.
So I want to go through each one by one. Can we start with what you found on interrupting the target?
Foremost, I found that Officer Mickey Keenan never interrupted Bancroft throughout the March 31st conversation. I did find a single instance of Corey Hyde interrupting Bancroft, but this one instance is not significant enough to raise red flags.
Let's move on to the next one. What did you find on speaking on behalf of the target?
Similarly, I found that Keenan never interrupted Bancroft throughout this conversation. Again, I found one single instance of Hyde interrupting Bancroft, but again, it did not significantly impact my conclusion because it only happened once.
Moving on, why is there a dot under the category done by Hyde for manipulating the tape?
Generally, linguists take manipulating the tape to be an intentional action. Although I did find static on this tape, there is no evidence to indicate that it was intentional, and throughout my review of Corey Hyde's affidavit, I did find an indication that it was due to a shift in his posture or seating position.
And can you explain what you found on coaching the informant?
Of the 10, this is the only one that I did find was utilized by Keenan. Corey Hyde used language that was said by Keenan in an email on March 30th.
Now, Dr. Warren, what does all this blank space on the chart represent?
Simply put, there is no evidence or any indication that any of these were used.
Thank you, Dr. Warren. You can take your seat. So finally, can you sum up your conclusions about what you found when reviewing the facts in today's case?
As evidenced by the significant amount of blank space on my chart, there is a lack of any evidence to suggest that there was inducement.
Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions.
Dr. Kennedy? Wishful thinking.